Those are mine.
Hello. I'm in a hearing. I think they've got everybody muted. I just want to let you know that's what I was doing. That's why I didn't answer the phone.
I can't hear anything.
People are saying they.
Mute myself, which I just did. This goes away. Okay, so let's jump right in. Backing up, this is a public meeting to take public comment on the petition that was submitted to the Department of Environmental Conservation under the Public Water Rules entitled Managing Wake Boats and Their Activities on Vermont Lakes and Ponds. I've introduced myself along with Laura and Jenna. So we have about the next 2 hours together. This is the overview of how we'll spend this time. I'll provide some housekeeping notes, a lot having to do with when we get to the public comment phase, how that's going to roll out, and just some of the general stuff. From there, I'll provide a background on the use of public waters rule and a little bit about the legal framework for why the Department of Environmental Conservation is reviewing this permit, and a little bit about the process we use to amend the rules. From there, we'll have a short presentation from the petitioners, the Responsible Wakes Vermont Lakes group, to understand their petition. For folks who have or haven't read it, this would be a good reminder or overview. We will entertain at that point clarification questions. And by that, I mean, I didn't understand this. I didn't hear you. Can you repeat that? This is not a meeting to get into discussion or debate about the merits or lack thereof of the petition. This is a meeting to take comment from the public, which I'll talk about in a minute. So we will have 10 minutes or less of clarification questions only If the questions are sort of detailed questions, or how do you think that this study supports your position, we will ask you to submit those in writing. We will eventually respond to those written questions, and we'll move on to the next clarification question. I'll cut that off after 10 minutes, and we'll get into the public comment, because that's why we're here tonight. In terms of the public comments, we did ask folks to sign up to make a comment by yesterday at 4 p.m. We did get at least 20 people who did that, so thank you. And the people who did that will be asked to comment in chronological order from which their comment request was registered with us. If there is time at the end, before 7:30 p.m., we will take additional ad hoc comments from folks who are here and didn't register, or for folks who are online and didn't register. And we'll do a brief wrap up and talk about some next steps at the very end. Try to get out here at around 7:30. And as folks know, we do have another meeting similar to this one for Southern Vermont in Manchester next week. So as I said, the purpose of this meeting is to provide some relevant background information on the public waters rule, the process to amend the rules, and the petition itself, and then take public comment on the petition. And that's really what we're focused on tonight. We want to hear from you about your reactions, your thoughts on the petition. If folks have anecdotal experience, sort of empirical evidence of their use of wake boats, of what the use of wake boats has led to their experiencing on Vermont's lakes and ponds or other water bodies, that's what we're particularly interested in hearing. If you simply want to get up and say, I support this petition or I oppose this petition, that's useful as well. The purpose of these first two meetings and this written public comment period is to help inform DEC as we review the petition, and help us inform our position as we move forward or not, which I'll speak about in a minute, on potential rulemaking in response to this petition. The meeting's being recorded. We will provide a written response to question raised during the meeting. Got to unmute myself. Please keep your microphones muted. But as I was saying, we are recording this meeting. The recording will be posted online. We will eventually provide written response to comments and, as I said, questions raised during the meeting. When we do get to the comment phase, we'd like to ask you to keep your comments to 2 minutes. Laura and myself will ask you to finish up at 2 minutes. If you're still going strong at 3 minutes, I'll keep a respectful distance given that there's a pandemic going on, but give you the eagle eye to ask you to finish up. We do have at least 20 people registered for comments, if not more. So, if you go on a little bit, that's okay. We have time. And as I said, if there's extra time at the end, we'll take some of these ad hoc comments. For folks in the room who want to make an ad hoc comment, there's a sign-up sheet at the back on a clipboard. For folks online who want to make an ad hoc comment, please put that in the chat. The Microsoft Teams has a chat function. Hopefully folks are familiar with that by now. And we'll take as many ad hoc comments as we can till around 7:30. We are still taking written comments on this petition through July 17. So if we don't get to your written comment, your verbal comment tonight, you can either come to the Manchester meeting next week and sign up, please, to make a comment prior to July 6th, or just submit your comment verbally. Please be civil and respectful in your comments. I don't think we're gonna have a problem with that. We've had hearings in the past and public meetings where that's been an issue. There is law enforcement across the street and in the room, so if necessary, we'll ask our friends to come and help out. So a few more housekeeping notes. If participating virtually, please keep your microphone muted unless speaking. I mentioned the sign-up sheet for ad hoc comments. I mentioned if you're participating virtually and want to make an ad hoc comment, please on the phone and we have time, we'll ask for ad hoc comments, because if you're on the phone, you can't use the chat. If you have registered for a comment, we will call people's name out, and please unmute yourself and turn on your camera, and so we can see you if you're working from a computer with a camera, and we'll call the speakers' names in order. And if you're in the room, please come up to the dais so you can speak into the microphone, so folks can hear you. Hopefully that all makes sense. Doing these hearings in a hybrid manner is tricky. So I'm going to jump right into sort of my opening remarks. Once again, it's great to see a lot of people in the room, and we really appreciate folks turning out in the room and online to both comment on this petition and hear what others have to say. So jumping in, this petition was submitted under the use of public water rules. So the use of public water rules, but the rules are derived from statute 10 VSA 1424. This has to do with management of lakes and ponds and safeguarding different activities on lakes and ponds. And the statute itself gets into the fact that this type of decision about use of public waters and recreational activities can be done through rulemaking. We have gotten that question quite a bit. Why is this being done through a rule as opposed to via a legislative act? And the answer is right there in statute. The Vermont legislature saw fit that these types of decisions should be handled through rulemaking as opposed to via specific legislation. That could always change, but that's the current legislative framework right now. Our basic approach to everything we do on lakes and ponds is held in public trust for the benefit of all Vermonters and visitors, and public recreational uses are protected. We want the public waters to be used for a variety of recreational activities, from wilderness and solitude to wildlife watching, to winter recreation, to non-motorized boating, to motorized boating, both high speed and low speed, fishing, water skiing, personal watercraft operation, and even seaplanes are permitted on some of our water bodies. So the thinking is we have over 800 lakes and ponds in the States. Way to allow provide habitat, drinking and irrigation water, and other designated uses as defined in the Vermont Water Quality Standards, which are in turn derived from the Federal Clean Water Act. And we must manage our waters to maintain compliance with the water quality standards. So that's out there as well. We're looking at using the use of public waters to manage recreational activities on our waters. We also have the water quality standards, which we're retired to use to regulate what happens on our waters. When waters standards, they're designated as impaired. Think about Lake Champlain. Lake Champlain is impaired for phosphorus here to clean it up. For load, there's impairments that can lakes and ponds, and we're required to do our best to avoid those impairments and restore those lakes to comply with the water quality standards if they do become impaired. I point that out because that maintaining compliance with the water quality standards factors into our decisions about use of public waters. And so from the broadest sense, the public water rules govern aquatic resource management and establish rules to protect normal uses on all of Vermont's public waters. So folks have read the rules. The rules restrict the type of motorized watercraft that may be operated on certain water bodies and set speed limits for motorized watercraft. There are some general use of public water rules that apply to all water bodies. That's section 3. And then there's probably about 50 pages of lake-specific rules that I think people are familiar with for the water bodies that they use and operate on. I'll mention this later, but there are 11 water bodies in the state that are not covered by the use of public water rules. Those are water bodies that are not entirely in Vermont. So that's Champlain, Memphremagog, Wallace Pond, and 8 reservoirs on the Connecticut River that we share with New Hampshire. So just so folks are clear, the use of public water rules do not apply to those 11 water bodies. So any decision that is or isn't made in response to this petition does not apply to Champlain, Memphremagog, Wallace Pond, and those 8 reservoirs. The rules provide guidance as well for the review of petitions from the public seeking the adoption of new rules to regulate the use of public waters. If folks were around in the 90s when the Water Resources panel under the Natural Resources Board was intact, they were probably aware that there was a very high volume of petitions at that point governing what can happen and what can't happen on different lakes and ponds. And I'll talk about that in a sec. But there is baked into the public water rules, as well as other statute in Vermont, a process to obtain petitions, for the public to submit petitions, and for us to review those petitions. And then this next point, basically pursuant to the rules, the agency is required to manage public waters along these lines. And I think folks who are familiar with the use of public waters will recognize this first one. The rules are really designed to help avoid or resolve conflicts in the use of public waters so that various uses can be enjoyed in a reasonable manner. And people who are around in the 90s when the use of public water rules were first promulgated, including some folks from the water ski Association of Vermont, sorry if I got that name wrong, have really highlighted the importance of that conflict resolution piece of the public water rules. The rules also require us to consider safety and the best interests of current and future generations of Vermonters, ensure that the natural resource values of public waters are fully protected, and provide an appropriate mix of water-based recreational activities on a statewide basis. So as I said, historically, up until 2012, these rules were administered by the Water Resources Panel of the Natural Resource Board. That was a staffed panel that took petitions, reviewed them, and made decisions. And those decisions then had the force of law. In 2012, about 10 years ago, the Vermont legislature saw fit to transfer that rulemaking authority from the Water Resources Panel of the Natural Resource Board to the Agency of Natural Resources, and the Water Resources Panel was dissolved at that point. So for about the last 10 years, the authority to enter into rulemaking under these public water rules has lied with the Agency of Natural Resources that I represent. So through the Department of Environmental Conservation's Watershed Management Division, which Laura and I are part of, we have the responsibility to administer certain surface water rules, including the use of public water rules, and we're responsible for receiving and reviewing petitions to adopt, amend, or repeal such rules. And when I get into process, I'll talk a little bit about how we interact with colleagues like Fish and Wildlife as we engage in that rulemaking effort. And so to support the review of petitions that are submitted by the public, we developed procedures in 2013 to provide a clear, transparent, and consistent decision-making process, and also indicate to petitioners how we were going to review a petition. And we're following those procedures today, and hopefully folks have had a chance to see those if they're interested. And these procedures are consistent with standalone use of public water rules requirements and the Natural Resource Board rules of procedure. Even though the Natural Resource Board was dissolved, their rules of procedure still have the force of law because we haven't gotten around to making an updated version yet. So here's the procedures we're using to review the petition. First, the petition must be submitted in line with established procedures. And then we review the petition to ensure that it's administratively complete. When it gets that designation, we make it publicly available on our website. At that point, we consult with Fish and Wildlife, Forest Parks and Recreation, our two sister departments in the Agency of Natural Resources, as well as the State Police Marine Division, which is the law enforcement role. The DEC administers the public water rule in Fish and Wildlife and State Police Marine Division. So we get their comments on the petition, which we've already done. We're currently at this yellow phase where we are required by statute to obtain public participation, but we also really want to hear what people have to say. So it's a good requirement. And actually Act 38 of 2012 requires to do expanded public comment in response to rulemaking efforts, which is, again, once we get through this phase, DEC will do an analysis of the petition, all that we've received, our statutory guidance on the subject, in this case, of the wakeboat petition. That analysis can take a number of months. We'll do that review. We'll consult with other jurisdictions, other states to see what they've been up to on this issue. And eventually we'll make a recommendation to the Agency of Natural Resources leadership on whether or not to deny the petition or to advise our secretary that we should initiate formal rulemaking. And that rulemaking could be a cut and paste of the proposed rule in the petition, or it could be we've decided that we want to initiate rulemaking, but through our own research and analysis, we're going to modify the rule, and we're going to propose rulemaking on a modified version of that rule. So it may not look like what came in the petition, but it might be something we want to initiate rulemaking on. It has the decision of whether or not to initiate rulemaking. Secretary Julie Moore, she makes that decision, and notice of this decision is then communicated to all concerned parties. If we decide to initiate formal rulemaking in response to this petition, we then follow a whole nother established statutory process for rulemaking, which has multiple steps. Folks might be familiar with the terms ICAR and LCAR, the Interagency Committee on Administrative Rules, which is Governor Scott's body, the Legislative Committee on Administrative Rules, which is represented by members of the legislature, as well as additional public comment phases, and a large role for the Secretary of State to ensure that the process is done in accordance with statute. So that's the sort of dry and procedural background of why we're here tonight. I think as I said in the overview, I'll ask folks to hold the clarifying question to that, and we'll jump right into petitioners' short presentation of their petition. So to do that, you need to exit out of here. So the individual from the Responsible Wakes for Vermont Lakes group that's going to be making this presentation, barring any technical difficulties, is joining us via Teams. I'll allow him to introduce himself in a minute. Just need to share the screen for that presentation. All right. Mark, are you with us?
I am. Can you go back to the first slide there, Oliver?
I can. So, Mark, you're speaking through speakers. Please speak loudly and clearly. And when you want me to advance to the next slide, please say next slide. You have about 10 minutes and the floor is yours.
Okay, and I'm going to remove a couple of slides based on what you just covered there, so I'll have you just flip through those. So, my name is Mark Milazzo. I'm a resident of Petition, Vermont. I live on Petition Pond. I was born and raised in Vermont, and I've been a boater all my life. We'd like to thank Oliver and Laura for hosting this public meeting and giving us a chance to speak. Next slide. So in terms of agenda, I'll give you a brief overview of who we are, what are wake boats and why regulate them in Vermont, our proposed rule change. Won't cover the legal basis because Oliver's just done a great job of that. Justification for our request, talk about the opposing views on managing wake boats. We'll show that Vermont is not alone in this issue in wanting to regulate them, and then the multiple stakeholders that are growing list of multiple stakeholders are calling to regulate wake boats in Vermont. So next slide. Okay, so we were Responsible Wakes for Vermont Lakes was formed in March of 2021. We include a pretty diverse group of people. We're engaged in efforts to conserve and manage our resources, Vermont lakes and resources. We all got all kinds of different users of the waters. We've got boaters, water skiers, paddlers, sailors, swimmers. We also got a lot of people in our group that are involved in other stuff like water quality, invasive species patrols, so on and so forth, with the whole goal of maintaining and improving Vermont lakes for not only current generation and future generation. And I'll just note that we have no paid lobbyists. So the next one. So Oliver, if you could flip to that video, and I'll tell you when to cut it off. This is is going to be a video on. Rather than me talk about it, I think it's better to kind of share a video that we made last year of a wake boat in action. This is on Lake Raponda in southern part of Vermont. It's a 121-acre lake, and it's got a maximum depth of 12 feet. Go ahead, Oliver.
Mark, the video froze, so I think we'll stop it there and head back to the presentation.
Okay. If you want to just go to the next slide, that'd be great.
All right. Let me navigate back to the presentation here. Mark, the floor is yours.
Okay, I'm seeing still the slide on Lake Raponda.
Go to the next slide.
Yeah, if you can go to the next slide. There you go. So wake boats have unique features. First is an enhanced weight. So the picture on the wake on the left-hand side, you can see the boat. It's weighted down into the water, and it's basically creating a wave. So it's like going to the beach, but on a lake or pond in Vermont. The waves are around 2 to 5 feet. In the middle, you'll see the the deep propeller wash. So basically, they push the engine back in this boat. The drive shaft comes off the front of the motor and then V's out the boat. And basically, what that does, given the angle of the boat and the angle of the prop, you basically got a prop wash cone that's going down to the bottom of the lake. And then on the right, it has a large inaccessible ballast tanks. And I'll talk about those in a little bit. Next slide. Oh, before we go off of that, according to Surf Hungary in 2022, a wake boat would cost you anywhere for an entry-level boat of about $86,000 to a well-loaded boat for over $175,000. So let me get to the next slide here. So why regulate wake boats in Vermont? Well, when a wake boat is on a lake, they monopolize it at the expense of all other users. We've learned about this in the studies and what we've seen in action in Vermont. And just give you a couple of examples that, and a couple of these, I think both of these are in our petition. So Mr. Wright on Lake Iroquois, whose grandson had a large wake boat from a wave from a wake boat, washed him under the dock. As he was wearing a life jacket, he got caught between the water and the underside of the dock. Fortunately, there were people next to him. They were able to pull him out, but he was stuck underneath the dock. We also have another example of an elderly couple being treated to a pontoon boat ride on Lake Fairleigh, who had a wake boat wash up over the boat. And you know how high pontoon boats typically sit, and drenched the 93-year-old man and his 90-year-old wife's lower extremities. So next slide, Oliver. So,
hey, Mark.
Yes.
Mark, can you hear me?
I can.
Yeah, Mark, I was just going to remind you to speak slowly and clearly. We can hear you, but you're coming through some tinny speakers. So just speak as slowly and clearly as you can. Thanks.
Apologize. So the issues that we see with wake boats, three major areas. One, on the left-hand side, environmental. Up in the upper left-hand corner, I talked about that prop wash cone. And again, think of that just scouring the bottom and stirring up everything on the bottom. And that can be a number of different things like resuspending sediment, especially phosphorus, destruction of aquatic vegetation, water critters in their habit. And then if you go down to the middle set of pictures on that left-hand box, that seawall on the right-hand side, that seawall is 32 inches high. There's a wake boat 300 feet off of shore. And you can see that wave is easily topping that 32-inch seawall. Then in the bottom, you have this is coming from some folks up in Maine, a watershed group on Kaiser Lake. And there's a wake boat in the left-hand picture, bottom left-hand picture, that's about 250 feet to the left. And that wake is propagating to the right. And then you go to the picture on the right, you can see the loon nest in the back. And basically that wave is washing that and tipping that loon nest. So if there's an egg on that, it could either get washed off or it could crack. On the right-hand side, top, public safety. So I wish I would have been able to show you the video, but these waves, as you can see in the picture on the left that I talked about topping the seawall, these are pretty large waves. So if you got kids playing on a public beach or in the shoreline, or people paddling, or even people in small fishing boats, or even relatively large fishing boats, there's a significant safety issue. And I think you may hear about some of the stories today. And then the bottom right-hand corner, a big concern is AIS propagation. So these ballast tanks are sealed. So in Petition Pond, we have a greeter program, and I think there's a number of greeter programs in the state of Vermont. Unfortunately, these ballast tanks are sealed, so you can't inspect them when they come to the boat launch. They also can't be completely drained. So they could harbor AIS from one lake that has milfoil, for example, drain their tanks at that lake, but still have some residual water there, move to another lake, pull in more water, drain that out of that lake, and propagate or spread milfoil. So a big concern of ours is AIS and AIS propagation, or aquatic invasive species propagation. So next one. And Oliver, I'm going to skip the next 3 slides because I think you covered, actually the next 2 slides I'm going to skip. And if you go to slide number 10.
Yeah, I'm there.
Okay, I'm not sure, I can't see it. So keep going. It would be proposed public water rules.
Continue.
Okay, I'm going to keep on talking. I guess we'll get to that slide. But so we have asked, based on our research over the last year, we're asking for 3 things. We're asking that the distance from shore where wake boats are operated is greater than 1,000 feet. We're asking that the water depth is greater than 20 feet. And we're asking that the area of the water body satisfying 1 and 2 is more than 60 contiguous acres. And we believe that 60 contiguous acres allows enough space for a wake boat to operate. So if a lake does not meet all 3 of those criteria, the wake boats would be prohibited. And it's important to note that this proposed rule does not apply to the use of wake boats behind a conventional vessel that has not been modified with wake enhancing equipment. So Oliver, if you can go to slide 11, why 1,000 feet from shore?
Yes.
You can see it?
Yeah, we can. Go ahead.
Okay, so how did we arrive at 1,000 feet? Well, shorelines and near shore aquatic habitat are disturbed by waves that are much larger than normal. At 200 feet from the boat, the boating industry claims that wake surf waves are comparable to those from sustained winds greater than 20 miles per hour, and therefore not a problem. However, the problem is in inland Vermont lakes, those winds hardly ever occur. The prevailing winds in most inland lakes in Vermont are highly directional, like those shown in the example on the right-hand side. So even if the strong winds occur, there are sections of the shoreline that are hardened by the winds. So even when the strong winds occur, there are sections that are hardened by the winds, but there's large sections that are not directly exposed to the winds and then not vulnerable to boat waves. So this is Lake Dunmore on the right-hand side and showing the prevailing winds. And the hardened shoreline and the vulnerable shorelines are shown by H and V. Now, the vulnerable shoreline sections have been directly exposed to waves from traditional boating activity like water skiing, regulated to 200 feet from shore for a long time. So our argument is that the argument from the boating industry about they're comparable to high winds doesn't hold water. Our argument is that comparison is not to wind waves, but rather waves from traditional boating activity at 200 feet. Next slide.
Great. And Mark, I'll ask you to finish up in about 2 minutes, please.
Okay, so can you go to slide 15, Oliver? Because I'm not going to be able to get to all this. And you can
Sure,
just
the slide that is up in the room and on Teams says, why 1,000 feet from shore?
Yeah, can you go to slide 15,
Just the
which
slide
is opposing views on managing wake boats?
Sure.
Okay, so the views that we get, what we tried to look at the opposing views on managing wake boats. So I'm going to try to go through those until Oliver cuts me off. One of the arguments is wake sports are family friendly. Well, all other boating activity and water activity are also family friendly. We estimate in our petition wake boats make up less than 1% of all boats in Vermont on the lakes that we surveyed. So let's all have fun. Next argument is operator education is better than regulation. And we'd love to see the opposition's data on this because we haven't found any. We do feel strongly about education, but unfortunately, education is not going to reduce the risk of spreading new and spreading existing AIS. The third one is a minimum lake size. It's all that's required to manage wake boats. Well, as we've gone through our science, through our research, the science says you have to operate these boats 1,000 feet from and greater than 20 feet in water. And it doesn't matter what size the lake, whether it's 500 acres, 1,000 acres. Number 4, wake surfing waves are comparable to strong winds. Well, I talked about that, and our peer-reviewed study rebuts this information. Number 5, regulating wake sports will hurt property values. We actually think it's just the opposite, and we have research in our petition that rebuts this. And number 6, the petition is the first step towards banning all motorboats. It's not the case. Nowhere in our petition will you find that we want to ban other water activities or other boats. We've never talked about it. It's not something I know I'm not going to get involved in, and I think we all don't want to get involved in. And then the last one, the petition only chose to study favoring their argument. And in developing our petition, we reviewed and include all relevant studies we could find. This included a couple studies from the wakeboat industry, and we're open to considering additional relevant studies that become available or that are brought to our attention. And you want me to end there, Oliver?
Yeah, so let's wrap it up. I think this is your last slide. So please finish up, and then we'll move on to the next phase.
Okay, so this isn't just a Vermont issue. In this one we have 17 states, and you can add 2 new ones to that, at least 2 new ones. Alabama and South Carolina are working to regulate or have regulated wake boats. And you can see it goes overseas as well, up into Canada. And then the last slide is you can see the organizations that we have. They're supporting us and supporting wake boat management in Vermont, and they cover a lot of the some major groups in Vermont, but also some towns, fishing organizations, boards. So there are a number of groups that are supporting wake boat regulation. And I'll end it there. Thank you, Oliver.
Great, thanks, Mark. And I want to questions either for Mark presentation or for my remarks. 6:07 now, so we will take clarifying questions, and I will put that, and then we'll move on to taking moments. So I will try to all forth in the room. So anyone has put a question? Sir. We provided guidance to the group on process, period. Sir.
And more rods or rods for presentations very common.
Yeah, agreed. Would someone from so that's a clarifying question for the Responsible Wakes for Vermont Lakes group. Would someone want to try to answer that question from the gentleman here? Oh yeah, we do have need folks. So actually, as are targeting specific, did you say V drives? Okay. So Jack, if you want to try to answer that question.
V drives aren't specifically focused. If you've read the petition, which I hope you will, it's spelled out very clearly. We're talking about ballast boats and other types of operations that would contribute to enhanced wake. So those are the boats that we're talking about. Please look at that very carefully. It's spelled out well.
Sir.
I have a question. Science of the team, my great research. There are a tremendous amount of studies that vary in the outcome of erosion and its relation to wind and wake boats and how they differ. And that seems to kind of vary across the board, the majority of which seem to cause more shoreline erosion. What is there any story on how we came up with this particular science and how it was showcased on this particular presentation for tonight's meeting?
Borderline clarifying question, but I'll give it to you. Jack, do you want to try to respond to that briefly?
Please read the petition, the information that you request. There are some supplements to our petition, and I encourage you to, because Windwich knows from.
And, you know, I think that's the kind of question we'd love to get in writing. So we can either provide you a response ourselves or we work with petitioners to provide that response. We're not really qualified and equipped to answer that question this evening. So please do submit that question in writing. I saw this gentleman in the hand and then this gentleman in the second row. Excuse me, with a hat. Sorry. No, that's fine.
If you have a wake boat, it's energizing it in order to create a wake is an option. It's not a constant thing. So if these rules and regulations are adopted, if you have a boat that has the enhancement ability of creating from operating on the waterway, if you're not using your ballast or wave augmenting equipment.
So we don't have a rule or a decision on rulemaking yet. So with that caveat, I'll try to answer your question. My understanding of the petition, and Jack can correct me if I'm wrong, is that if the rule is enacted as proposed in the petition, a wake boat in surf mode, if that is from my read of the petition, that's a common term, a wake boat in surf mode would be prohibited on lakes that don't meet their 3 criteria. However, a lake that doesn't meet those 3 criteria, a wake boat just operating like any other motorized vessel would be allowed. Is that correct, Jack? Sir. Mark. Yeah, so thank you. Mark, the question was, did you make a remark in your presentation that less than 1% of motorized vessels or other vessels in Vermont are wake boats?
Can I
did.
answer that, please?
I did.
If it,
Go ahead.
it's, it was stated as an estimate. If you look in the table 2 or 3, we did an estimate on 14 lakes, and that's what that basis is on. We did not have proof of exactly what's in Vermont. It was strictly an estimate. One point in time from last year. That's it.
So yeah, before you go, I'll say we've been asked that question, and the Department of Motorized Vehicles, when boats are registered, as you may know, registers them based on length, not based on any other criteria. So I honestly don't know. I don't think anyone else in the state knows how many wake boats there are in Vermont today, or wake sports boats. You wanted to do a follow-up, sir?
You mentioned the shorelines issue. Is there evidence in this talk about the less than 1% of those boats causing this erosion?
The best evidence that we have, our reading of the literature from everything we've been able to find in the world is included in that. We do comment on that, but it's like when COVID came along. The data didn't exist. We're working with the data that we now have with the best estimates that we have at this particular time.
Yeah, I see your hand. Laura, is there anybody online that wanted to make a clarifying question? Okay, great. Those will enter into the official record. Sir.
Came to decide a one study, they had their own study done. I mean, we're seeing some questions about specific numbers at this point, percentages. And the bookers said it wasn't our estimates. So I'm wondering if the study with regards to the shoreline erosion is estimate as well.
Jack, are you able to take that question?
Again, please read the petition and submit your questions. We'd be glad to have any data that you have. We've done our best to explain that, and that's all I can offer you right now.
Yeah, again, I think we'd appreciate getting those questions sort of their more I wouldn't call them clarifying, more questioning the conclusions and or the justification for respond to those. Ma'am. The question was, if I can summarize, in the research cited in the petition, beyond looking at the impacts of wake boats on either, I guess, wave energy, shoreline erosion, and other recreational impacts, did any of the studies that the petitioners used consider other types of boats in the wakes that those boats generate, including pontoon boats and, I guess, regular outboard and inboard boats without ballast operating at different speeds? Is that correct? Yep. No, I think, thank you. Your question's clear. The folks online have heard it. Does anyone from the Responsible Wakes Vermont Lakes group want to answer that? And that's going to be our last clarifying question. We'll do one more for this gentleman. Once he's had a chance to answer, sir, just he'll answer that question and you can speak.
So as I said before, exhaustive studies haven't been done on conditions. The most recent one to help address your question, I think, is the one from the University of Minnesota, which is recorded in our petition. If you have a look at that, they did look at other boats, did comparisons of those waves. One. And
This will be our last clarifying question, sir.
Section 2.4 of the rules calls for consultation and public involvement. And back in the day, board, saying petitioners were required to consult with interested affected groups. I'm wondering, or the petition was going to be rejected. That was the policy. Right now, however, I'd like to know if the petitioner actually reached out to the reporters or reporting organizations in that time to get an opinion from the other side.
No, it was not a rule, so we did not. I would say that our of what we have.
Yeah, it's a great point. The procedures that we're following date back to 2013. Act 138 was passed, dissolving the Water Resources Panel. So it's not an explicit requirement. Is actively seeking input and comment here. Before we make a decision on whether or not to initiate rule to engage, is that before we at 90s, the Waterbury Reservoir, I get folks sitting around the table to see if there's all of this. What's unique to this petition, different from those Lake Garley examples in the 90s, as a model isn't. Excuse me, clarification questions. There is just one more thing I want to share with the group before we move into comments. I'm just going to share my screen one more time because this is a question that people have asked quite a bit. Sorry, I need to go to presentation mode. Not quite there yet. So what I'm trying to get to, if my computer catches up, is this. If this is informational, if this rule was enacted as is, what would be the impact on Vermont's lakes and ponds? this rule, if enacted as is, which is a big if, but I'll just state that, would allow for wake sports to take place on 15 lakes covered in these public water rules, where we have that defined wake sports zone of at least 60 acres, 1,000 feet from shore with a 20-foot depth. Those 15 lakes are listed here. Chittenden and Somerset reservoirs do meet the criteria of the petition, but there's other existing rules which limit speeds to 5 and 10 miles per hour respectively. I did some research and it seems like 9.5 miles per hour is the very minimal speed that wake sport activities require. The predominant wake sports are done at speeds greater than 10 miles per hour. So for the purposes of this presentation, I put Chittenden and Somerset as off limits due to those existing speed limits in these public water rules. I did put a question mark on the 10 mile per hour issue, just in case someone wants to explain to me that, yes, we can do wake sports at 9.5. I'm not an expert. As I said, these rules do not have jurisdiction on these 11 water bodies that are not entirely in Vermont, so the proposed rule would not apply. And then where would wake sports be prohibited? So the smallest lake that met the requirements of Little April at 470 acres. So 250 other lakes and ponds in the state, smaller than Little April, would have wake sports prohibited. There are 7 water bodies which are greater in size than Little April, but because of their narrow shape, don't meet the 1,000 foot from shore requirement in the petition. Those are Shelburne Pond, Lake Clatonia, Norton Pond, and then these 3 reservoirs, Bearhead Mountain, Waterbury, and Harriman. So if this petition was enacted as is, those other water bodies would be prohibited for wake sports. Green River Reservoir already has a 5 mile per hour limit, so it would also be prohibited. So I just wanted to share that information with folks. Finally, we are beginning to do GIS analysis of all the lakes in the state to see what a wake sport zone would look like. We're not going to spend a lot of time on it because we don't know if we're going to initiate rulemaking in response to this rule or not. But just to get a sense for what it looks like, here's 2 water bodies in the state. On the left is Lake Maury. When you look at 1,000 feet from shore, there is a 90-acre polygon that's 1,000 feet from shore and 20 feet depth. So this would be the wake sports zone in Lake Maury, Fairlake, Vermont, similar in Great April Pond, April, Vermont, 1,000 feet from shore. This is the wake sports zone. There is a piece which is 258 contiguous acres. There's a small piece of it that is not 20 feet in depth, so that would have to be faded off. And so there would be a wake sports zone of 242 acres on Great April Pond in April, Vermont. So those 2 slides just give folks a concrete example of what the impacts of this petition rule that's still a proposal would be if enacted. Finished with this part of the meeting, we're going to transition into taking public comment. Okay. Now you get to speak. We've spoken enough.
So I have a list of folks who have requested ahead of time to speak, and we'll be timing for 2 minutes. And these are just your chance to give a comment, and we will be responding to the comments at a later date. We have another meeting next week where we're also collecting comments, and so we're compiling all of them and doing one response. So if you have a quick clarifying question, we may answer, but really this is just a point to get your voice heard and hear what you have to say. Sound good? All right. So, and then I know a couple other people may have signed up when they got here. So if we have time, we will go to that list. So first I have Virginia Lawless. And then if you could just come up to the microphone, that would be great. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ginny Lawless, to those of you who know me. My husband John and I have been on Lake Parker for over 30 years. Lake Parker is a smaller lake located in the Northeast Kingdom in West Glover with an area that encompasses 239 acres. Many small creatures live in and on the lake, with my personal favorite being the loons, closely followed by mink and otters. It's my love of and concern for the loons that brings me here to speak today. For the past several years on Lake Parker, the loons have nested on the western shore near a marsh out of the way of the prevailing winds. Therefore, the nests are protected from any significant wind-driven waves, but would not be protected from the waves created by wakeboat sports. Loons would be negatively impacted by the presence of wake boats on the water, and due to the precarious nature of their nesting habitats, the loons would be at great risk of harm by wake boats at a time when conservation efforts are underway to restore their population. We've been fortunate not to have witnessed any wake boats to date on Lake Parker, and we hope that they will be limited due to the negative impacts their waves impart on the loons and other wildlife present on the lake. I fully support the petition brought forth by the group Responsible Wakes for Vermont Lakes. Thank you for your consideration of this petition.
Thanks. And if you were on this list and you're on the phone or joining us over Teams, just unmute yourself. The next person on the list is Ben McLaughlin.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ben McLaughlin, and I'm an avid boater in the state of Vermont. I'm involved in the Lake Fairley Association down in Fairley, Vermont, which supports this petition. I do not support this petition. I think that the proposed regulation is overreaching. I think that the science doesn't necessarily support the nature of the petition. Ironically, my main function in the Lake Fairley Association is our water treatment of our lake. And so a lot of my heart and soul has gone into the water quality of the lake. But having attended a few of the early meetings of the Responsible Wakes for Vermont Lakes meetings, I think there's a lot of a bit of fear mongering that started the petition. In fact, some of the early names of the group were not as friendly as they are now, as the Responsible Wakes for Vermont Lakes. But that being said, some of the proposed some of the verbiage behind it, there kind of goes back to sales 101, using fear, uncertainty, and death, and using some anecdotal evidence, real or not, about the nature of wake boats. I can tell you that I Lake Fairley since the more hatchings in the last 13 years than we had in the previous 13 years, and oddly enough, they don't seem to be affected by wake boat operation and enhanced wake operation on our lake. I think that when operated responsibly, I can also that wake boats and wake operation, certainly on a lake of our size, will not cause harm to the lake and its environment and its water quality. I know that in the last 2 years, got it. The last part is that I know that our operation as wake boat operators on Lake Fairley has adjusted over the last year, become more aware of some of the possible effects of this. So we've adjusted our operation, and I think that education will be key to the solution of any potential problems. Thank you.
Next, we have Jennifer Andrews.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jennifer Andrews. I reside on the shores of Shadow Lake in Glover. I'm the Shadow Lake Association president, and I'm here to represent over 120 families who would like regulations placed on wake boat operation. I fully support this petition, and here's why. We need to protect the shoreline from undue erosion. The sediment that is entering the lakes from these large waves contributes to the elevated level of phosphorus. And we all know That's not something we want in our lakes. We need to protect animal habitat, especially the loons that was spoken about earlier, that nest right along the shoreline. We need to protect the Vermont waters from the spread of aquatic invasive species, both plants and animals, that could be transferred from lake to lake via wakeboat ballasts. These ballasts cannot be properly, as the state states, cleaned, drained, and dried. We need to protect public use. When weight boats are operating on a small lake and pond, other uses such as kayaking, swimming, paddle boating, rowboating, fishing, and sailing are seriously impeded and even in danger due to the wake size and the closeness of the boat. Hence, all of these activities are curtailed. We need to protect public safety. I have a firsthand experience on Shadow Lake that was absolutely frightening. You bet. A boat came to our lake. I didn't know what it was, but I knew it was way too big for Shadow Lake. And as the activity from that boat progressed, I noticed it was a wake boat. The next day, when the boat was getting ready to leave, they went by near our shoreline. I saw the wake waves and I knew that this was going to be problematic. I was on the dock where we have our whaler tied up. The waves and the wave train was so ginormous that it lifted the dock, me, off the bottom of the lake. Our whaler crashed into and under the dock, being damaged. If there had been my grandchildren, who are 3 years old and under, 3 of them, if they had been anywhere on that dock, it would have been disaster. Please support this petition. Thank you.
Next, I believe we have David Dean, who I believe is joining us remotely. So if you can unmute.
I am unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Good evening. My name is David Dean, and I'm here to speak in support of the petition for managing wake boats on Vermont lakes and ponds as chair of the Connecticut River Valley chapter of Trout Unlimited on behalf of the small lakes and reservoirs in our southeastern area, and by inference for all small lakes in Vermont. Wake surfing waves are 2 to 2.5 times larger and 5 to 9 times the peak power of conventional water skiing wakes. University of Minnesota found that to protect lake shores from this exaggerated erosive power, wake surfing should not occur closer than 1,000 feet from shore in order to make the total energy and peak power of wakeboat wakes comparable to that of water skiing. Wakeboats plow through the water with their bow up, endangering anyone hidden below the site elevation established by the bow in the direction of the boat's motion. In addition, this plowing design creates downward directed propeller wash that disturbs lake bottoms 20 feet or more in depth and has enough power to shred and uproot plants, and if those plants are exotic, spread those invasive species. This downward propeller wash stirs up bottom sediments, creating turbidity, disturbing microorganism, plant, and fish habitat. Beyond that, disturbing a lake bottom where there is any history of nutrient loading, the roiling of the bottom will release stored phosphorus into the water column, leading to accelerated plant growth and possible toxic algae blooms. I've been working to protect the health of Vermont waterways for 50 years. And every time I think I've taken and helped moved us a step forward in water quality, along comes another whiz-bang outdoor toy that erodes that progress. I do hope that you will put the rule in place as proposed. Wake boats are not healthy for small, shallow lakes. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on this proposed rule. And I have submitted my statement in writing.
Thank you. Next up, we have Rodney Putnam.
Good evening. My name is Rodney Putnam. My family and I live on Lake Iroquois, our primary year-round residence. I'm here to, I strongly oppose this petition the way it reads, and I feel very strongly that it's containing a lot of over-exaggerated marketing, and the numbers don't match. We moved to Lake Iroquois in 2015. There were 3 boats that fit this category. 2022, there are only 3 boats that fit this category. I called a friend that works at Sabre Marine, one of the largest dealers in Vermont. They sold approximately 160 boats. System. On page 7, they reference a boat called the Gigawave. It doesn't exist. It's a possible prototype that weighs 30 tons. My truck couldn't pull it down a country road and put it on any lake in the state. It's just massive. And it doesn't exist. I think that every lake should be studied. I feel like studies from out of state don't apply to Vermont's different from and heavy rains flooded the lake in the Ness that year. I also happened to see, I'd say it, but many kayakers park on top of the baby loons as leaves last night while I was grilling dinner. Water quality, the scorecard just came out, and the water quality for Lake Iroquois has the lowest phosphorus of almost ever. In the census study it's one of the lowest years that it's had that low phosphorus content. So coincidentally, since 2015 in surfing, phosphorus is in a very good spot for water quality. So I ask that you please reject the petition as it was read. Thank you.
So we have the library or our machines are having some network issues. So I'm just going to turn off incoming video, which I think I can do somewhere in settings. Is it in settings?
Maybe it's under more.
Yeah, no, I thought it was right at the top there.
Kill the share
Please,
function
turn off
also.
incoming video. So thank you. Please continue.
All right. The next is Chris Conant.
Hey, sorry, can you turn off the share function? Your slideshow is still up.
That's weird.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to bring a practical approach to this public hearing tonight. We have been living on Lake Iroquois for over 65 years. My family has enjoyed many, many years of skiing, water skiing, and boating. Many years ago, as my siblings and I were adolescents, after working for 15, 20 hours a day in the barn, my dad would get in the boat and he would drag us around the lake over and over and over skiing. He would drag other families' kids, and at times there were 6 ski boats on the lake pulling kids all around the lake, teaching them how to ski, how to kneeboard, how to tube, and even wakeboarding, and even barefoot skiing, which we all attempted. Every weekend during the summer months were filled with skiers and skiers behind all of our boats. Sometimes there were kids as young as 6 years old learning the ropes. Now, fast forward 20 years, my siblings and I have all had children, and we too jumped into our motorboats and pulled the kids around the lake for hours on end. And honestly, my expectations of speaking here tonight is that I can provide the same opportunity and joy to my grandkids and teach them how to ski and how to board and how to surf. I don't own a wake boat, but I do own a ski boat. My parents, my brothers and sisters, and myself have spent hours with huge grins on our faces teaching our kids how to navigate the waters of Lake Iroquois, always prompting safety and courtesy of our neighbors. We have done this for over 5 decades, always with respect to other families, other boaters, and safe in a manner that will always have fun and respectful welfare of our neighbors and visitors to the lake. If there were too many boaters or small water vessels on the water at one time, we would always just wait for a few hours until the lake cleared. Then the tribe would head out to the water until dark. We have had water ski courses, handmade ski jumps, and always took safety measures first and foremost. And I hope that that can continue today. As stewards of Lake Iroquois and many other lakes in Vermont, many of our associations will continue to work hard and educate our users in protecting the ecology and the health of our lake in Vermont through their missions and programs. Regulating watercrafts is not achieving the goals of use of public water rules. The public waters shall be managed so that the various users may be enjoyed in a reasonable manner, considering safety and the best interests of both current and future generations of citizens of the state, and the need to provide an appropriate mix of water-based recreation opportunities on the region and statewide basis. I'm here representing me, my family as an individual and not any association that I've been involved in, and I really do not support this petition. Thank you.
Next up, we've got Bruce Epstein. Also, just briefly, I see somebody has their hand up. Is that to speak or to ask a question? Carrie Clark, do you have your hand up? Okay, we'll come back. You want to put something in the chat that might help.
Hi, my name is Bruce Epstein. I'm president of the Green Mountain Water Skiers. Our organization has been in existence for over 40 years. We support multi-recreational use. We've worked with the legislature and state police on legislation. We've gotten bills passed. A lot of my thunder's already been stolen. I did mention section 2.4. That section is all about involvement. And what I did hear from the petitioner is that so far, I don't know what kind of outreach has been done to the conflicting use here, which is wakeboarding. We support amending the rules to include wakeboarding as a normal use, but we want to see a procedure that is fair and just. Right now, the participation hasn't existed yet with wakeboarders or the wakeboarding industry. Waterbury Reservoir would have never been resolved without the stewardship and leadership of the then Water Resources Board. They were hands-on. They actually sat down with petitioners to try to see what they could do to give them guidance and how to work with conflicting uses to try to get the best possible solution. I truly believe that's what we need right now. We need cooperation. We need to respect other users. We need involvement. I'm looking at some of my notes, which are kind of in the toilet right now, but the words I'm looking for, we need involvement, dialogue, and representation. That representation should include the petitioner. Should include wake sport enthusiasts. It should involve wake sport manufacturers. No one knows their boats like a wakeboard manufacturer. They have to be involved. It should include the Department of Public Safety, because whatever we do here has to be enforceable. If it isn't enforceable, it doesn't make any sense. And last but not least, any others as required by section 2.4. Good decision-making is no accident. What we need here now is a process that gives us good decision-making. I would respectfully ask that DEC consider having a panel and getting together a group of people that represent the various interests so people can talk to each other and try to come up with consensus here. Again, good decision-making, no accident. Thank you.
All right, I heard from Jim McCullough that he won't make it and he'll send comments in writing. I believe that's accurate. And then next up, we have David Kaminsky.
Thank you very much. My name is David Kaminsky. I live in Heinsberg, and support the current petition to manage wakeboard activities on vulnerable lakes and ponds in Vermont. I agree with the many reasons why wakeboard activities should be managed as described in the petition, spanning from recreational safety to environmental conservation. Over the years, the DEC has supported multiple projects related to water quality that have addressed runoff and soil erosion from farms and restoring functional lake shores and wetlands. To further improve water quality, the DEC has even gone so far as to approve the application of herbicide to up to 11 lakes or maybe more in Vermont. If the DEC is to remain consistent and true to its mission of environmental conservation, then it must also approve the current proposal to manage wakeboard activities on vulnerable bodies of water, because wakeboard activities disrupt water quality and contribute to the root cause of why non-native species exist in the first place. As described in the petition, a wakeboard boat and its activities can result in introduction of invasive species into lakes and ponds, as well as disturbance of lake bottoms and shorelines, leading to resuspension of deep sediments, release of nutrients bound to these sediments, and shredding and fragmentation of non-native plants, all of which can reduce water quality and lead to the favorable growth conditions and the distribution of non-native plants. Not including a management plan for wakeboard activities is inconsistent with the DEC's mission to protect the water quality of Vermont's lakes and ponds. Thank you.
All right, next up, we have Chrissy Kano, who's joining us remotely. So Chrissy, if you would like to unmute. Haven't heard you yet. If you are on the phone, you press *6 to unmute. Give you just a second. Well, Chrissy, if this doesn't work out, we can come back to you. Just put it in the chat if you're here. Also, just a note for everybody, you know, we're taking written comments until July 29th, and there's also a second meeting.
There's a comment in the chat from Chrissy, so I think we can probably move on.
Okay.
Technical difficulties.
All right, the next person is Kate Kelly. Hello?
Hi, hopefully you guys can hear me okay.
Yes, thank you.
Hi. Okay, great. So I just wanted to comment tonight as a herpetologist who studies reptiles and amphibians and a conservation biologist. And, you know, my main concerns, I guess, with the large wakes created by wake boats are related to shoreline erosion and bottom scouring, storing up sediments that in turn could impact amphibian breeding habitat and or cover eggs with sediment, which would make it difficult for them to successfully hatch. Severe shoreline erosion could potentially make it difficult for turtles to leave a water body to lay their eggs. And of course, in addition, the introduction of aquatic invasive species, as we all know, to really any water body could have large impacts on the food web, which would indirectly impact our native amphibian and reptile species in ways that, you know, we may not even know about or be able to predict at this point. I am, also concerned about the impacts of the large wakes on our nesting loons, which we have here locally. So I would encourage DEC and ANR to establish regulations on wake boats to limit their use to those larger water bodies and in deep water, well away from shorelines, so that they won't as strongly impact shorelines and our native species. Thank you.
I think you might be done. It broke up a little at the end. But thank you.
Yes, I'm all done. Thank you.
Next up on our list is, okay, sorry. Thank you. Next up on our list is Susan Gallo, who's also going to make a comment virtually.
Hi, everybody. Thanks. Good timing. I just finished.
Susan.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity. Oh, no. Am I good?
Yep, go right ahead.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yes, hello, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today in support of this petition. My name is Susan Gallo, and I'm the Executive Director of Maine Lakes. We are a statewide organization with a mission to protect Maine's lakes, ponds, and watersheds, and their many benefits for future generations. We have been engaged with our members over their growing concerns around issues with wakes, especially on smaller water bodies and in shallower water. And I should just clarify, we're not worried about ski boats. Ski boats, water ski boats go fast. They don't make big wakes. It's really the wake boats, larger wake boats that have us concerned the most. So we're concerned about artificially enhanced wakes created by wake boats and wake enhancing devices operating in shallow water and too close to the shore. We know these wakes degrade water quality, create safety hazards for people in or on the water, and they cause physical damage to shorelines and properties. To that end, we're working with the Maine, locally, we're working with the Maine Boat Impact Coalition, a group that is working on implementing similar policies to those before you to reduce wake damage on Maine's lakes and ponds. We're meeting with national groups of a national wake group that is interested in these kinds of issues. We are together keeping up to date and sharing ideas about policy solutions and science that support those policy solutions. We're also tracking the peer-reviewed literature on wake research, which is really important, especially to our members, because much of the research you might read about on wake boats is paid for by the industry and is done by consultants. It is not peer reviewed by fellow academics. It's a really important point, and it's really important that the science behind this petition is peer reviewed research. So I share these activities with you to let you know that our organization is, we're informed about current issues and research surrounding wakes and wake boats, both in New England and across the country. And based on that knowledge, Maine Lakes supports the petition before you as a common sense approach that will protect Vermont's lake water quality in areas where enhanced wakes do the most damage, within 1,000 feet of shore and at depths less than 20 feet. Particularly important to our organization support for this petition is, as I mentioned, the fact that it's guided by, okay, I'm almost done, peer-reviewed science. And I just want to add that Maine is really looking to Vermont to lead the way in setting smart, common sense, science-based policies that will allow wake boat activity to continue, but do it in a way that protects shorelines, water quality, and human safety. Okay. So we urge the ANR to act favorably. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next on the list is Art Greenbaum.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Art Greenbaum. I live in, I reside in Williston and have a camp on Lake Parker. The state of Vermont has invested millions of dollars to clean up our waterways over the past years. Boat wash stations have been put into many ramps, shoreline roadways have been planted, and road ditches have been stone lined, all to help prevent the spread of invasive plants and siltation to our waterways. There are strict rules regarding transporting aquatic hitchhikers, which include emptying water from your boat during transport, weed-free trailer, and the release of baitfish. All of these rules and improvements protect our lakes and ponds. I have witnessed many times the damage caused by motored boats heavily loaded, which cause a wake of 18 inches or more. These waves, created at a distance of 200 feet from shore, churn up the lake bottom and crash onto the shoreline, causing soil erosion as well as moving pieces of aquatic plants from shore points. Many property owners beef up their shoreline by building rock walls, which eliminate the shady shorelines which fish need for habitat. Our lakes and ponds have been benefited by the use of the public water rules adopted by the state. Wake boats have a deep prop disturbance, can possibly transport invasive plants in their holding tanks, and cause a wake in excess of 2 feet. These waves carry much more energy than a normal watercraft or ski boats. I support the petition for responsible wakes for Vermont. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Bill Lippert, who's joining virtually. Bill?
Can you hear me?
He's coming. Okay. Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Hi. Yes. Good evening. I'm Bill Lippert. I represent the town of Heinsberg as state representative, and am an individual who has enjoyed our lakes in Vermont through kayaking, canoeing, primarily. First of all, I want to say that the issues that are being raised by this petition are significant. Issues of environmental damage, damage to loons, the aquatic invasive species issues, which the state has invested tremendous resources in trying to protect our lakes, and we want to continue that. I also think that one of the key issues is the safe and fair access to the enjoyment of Vermont lakes by all Vermonters. I would like to encourage the DEC to carefully consider all the issues that are being raised in this petition, and to get ahead of the issues rather than wait until it's become even a greater issue. The number of wake boats impacting Vermont lakes, it appears to be unclear as to how many boats there are, but let's get ahead of the issue rather than wait until it's a further issue. And with that, I'd like to register my support for the issues that are being raised in this petition and ask DEC to carefully consider all of the issues here. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Stu Arnold.
Stu Arnold here. I am a year-round resident of Greensboro and live on Caspian Lake. I'm also a Lake Protection Committee Chair for Greensboro Association, managing our lay monitoring program, our greeter program at our boat launch for invasive species prevention, tributary monitoring, and such. I also do loon nesting, lake level, boater safety, and reclassification for our lake. I've read this proposal and I've discussed it with many property owners on Caspian, and as a collective, we support this petition to better manage wake boat sports for all of Vermont. Yet we are still concerned that our lake's impact, if this were to pass, given the passage of this petition, Caspian Lake, which is 800 acres, would probably have about 100 to 150 permitted wake sport zones, thus being subjected to an increased wake boat traffic. We had one wake boat last summer that I'm aware of. We have 1,200 to 1,600 boats get registered through our greeter program. And the biggest number are stand-up boards and kayaks, canoes, and fishing boats, and the boat traffic is quite a bit, for like skiing and such, is quite a bit less. So our concern is if this passes, there could be an increase of wake boat use here in Greensboro, and that's going to change some of the serenity that we have here. Caspian's a little unique also with the fact that we do have a prohibition to personal watercraft on our lake, and we are one of only a few. We would like to have, because of our current concerns for safety and environmental impacts, as a lot of people have mentioned, and our loon population, shoreline safety is of primary concern. Swimmers, small children.
It's been 2 minutes.
Okay. So we are concerned for both those shoreline safety issues and environmental impacts. We would even go so far to amend this to prohibit wake boat sports if associations desire such, as we have done with personal watercraft. Thank you all.
Thank you. Next, we have Paul Brzezinski.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Thanks for letting me speak. I'm actually from North Carolina. I have to commend the state of Vermont for even having a hearing and discussing these issues. I live on an 800-acre deep water lake, similar to the gentleman that just spoke. I, like a couple of the other speakers, have grown up on the water and water skiing. I'm from Minnesota originally, and on my lake, my folks have lived out here for 25 years, and I've lived out here for 5. And what I've seen is concerning for me. So I would support the petition. I think one of the biggest things coming up here too that's not really being discussed is underwater wave energy, and it's been mentioned, the propeller wash, but it can go down over 30 feet. We have a ski zone that limits our ski area to about 250 acres of the lake, and we're still seeing significant weed wash and bottom raking of the lake. We have gone from just under 10 wake boats registered on the lake to over 70 in just a few years. And if you look at the history, if you look at even the wake boat itself, I mean, we've had kids washing their docks, we've had kayaks overturned, we've had people knocked over and off their boats, et cetera, as have been mentioned. But wake boats, specifically, if they perform exactly as the manufacturer specifies, are the only type of boat that affects all other activities and all other boating on the lake. And I can tell you that if there's another wake boat or 2 on the lake, it's impossible to ski. I'm personally a disabled veteran, 100%. I've had 2 brain surgeries. I'd love wake surfing, but I won't do it on this lake because I've seen, it's one of the things I could do, but I won't do on this lake because I've seen the effect it has on other people and other activities. Again, thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak, and I wish you best of luck in having a discussion and doing some regulating of a technology that really wasn't in existence 15 years ago and is improving faster, the wakeboat technology is, than research can even keep up with. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Eric Splatt.
Hello, everyone. I'm Eric Splatt. I'm from Bombazine, Vermont. I'm co-owner and operator at Woodard Marine. I've been in the industry for about 25 years, I guess, on the boating side of things. At Woodard Marine, we deal with many different boats, not just wake boats. It's a smaller part of our business, but still a large part of our business. It actually, I guess where I could start is, firstly, my background. I've passed and certified Coast Guard captain. I've taught the Vermont State Boater Safety Course for about the past 15, 16, 17 years. Marine technician, have a lot of experience with boats. I'm also personally a wake surfer. I've actually been wakeboarding with ballasted boats since the 90s. Wake surfing started in the early 2000s, been around for a long time. It's not like it's something new to the area. In the past few years, we've seen an influx of people using their boats. Sales have actually gone down because of, the ability to get products during COVID. But one thing with COVID is that it forced people to go outside. So we've seen an influx, more usage of boats and things like that. Some of the things that I think wake boating or wake sports or water sports, go hand in hand with Vermont is outdoor activities, mountain biking, snow sports, our tourism that draws people to the area. To add to the point of AIS, I've dealt with that my whole life. I actually grew up on Lake Bombazine and on Lake George in New York. If you're familiar with Lake George, it's very aware of invasive species. Wake boats are very rarely trailered. In fact, most people have never seen their trailer. It is put into storage, it's taken out of storage, and not brought from lake to lake. They go to their home, they stay there, and that's it. So AIS in Vermont with wake boats is very rare, very, very rare. A couple more things, I know we're running out of time here. Basically, I think that the petition, which I'm not for, is proposing extreme actions, and the research has not been done on our end of things. Me being a wake surfer and my industry affecting 31 families that we support that work at Woodard Marine. Thank you.
Next up, we have Meg Handler.
Hi, my name is Meg Handler. I live on Lake Iroquois in Heinsberg. I support the petition and ask DEC to please adopt the proposed rule to manage wake boats on Vermont's inland lakes and ponds. I would like to mention here that what the petition asks for is a very common, very straightforward balance on recreational activities. This is not a ban on wake boats. This is just a simple recognition that not all activities are appropriate to all locations. I have dogs and I like to walk them off leash. But there are a lot of places where that activity is prohibited because it bothers other people or disturbs wildlife. There are trails that allow mountain biking and other trails, perhaps where it is steep and prone to erosion, where mountain biking is not allowed. There are ski trails where snowshoeing is not allowed. There are snowmobile trails where ATVs are not allowed. One very pertinent example that other people have mentioned is jet skis. There are lakes in Vermont that allow jet skis and other lakes where jet skis are prohibited because those lakes and ponds are considered too small for that particular activity. We can turn to other states and see the future here in Vermont. Right now, maybe there are not so many wake boats. What that means is now is exactly the right time for DEC to act. Please act now before things get out of hand and before wake boat management impact an overwhelming number of people. Please adopt the proposed rule to manage wake boat activity on Vermont's inland lakes and ponds.
All right, next up we have Ernie Rossi.
My name is Ernie Rossi, and my wife and two small children live on Lake Iroquois. This past weekend, we had two of the nicest sunny days of the year. Our lake was being enjoyed by everyone, and I noticed just one solo wakeboard boat out briefly. And the funny thing was, they were water skiing. Our boating community mingles well together on our lake. We rarely see multiple boats on the lake at one time. I also happen to live across from the public boat launch and can count on one hand how many wakeboard boats actually visit each summer. The few homeowners who do own a wakeboard boat are very respectful of others and use caution during their rides, making sure the waterways are clear and safe for those around. I do not support these new regulations. The petition references many false scenarios and speculation that simply doesn't exist on our lake. All it's doing is dividing our small communities and pinning neighbors against each other. We need to continue focusing on the real erosion concerns, such as storm runoff projects and shoreline buffers. Even with all these, one heavy rainstorm can wash all those good efforts away. Winds have been stronger than ever these past few years, and the large waves coming down our lake quickly turn into large white caps, slamming our shorelines for days, not just a couple of times from a passing boat. As I drove to work Monday and those heavy downpours we got, I watched rivers of muddy water flow down our hillsides, pouring into our lake like a brown cloud. These acts of nature are causing the biggest erosion problems. Let's focus on the rules we have in place and the ongoing education for best practices and safety for all. Thank you, DEC, for your time.
Okay, so next we're moving on to those are all the folks who signed up beforehand. We've got a couple people on this list that have signed up as they've arrived. We've got Adam Martin.
Good evening, and thank you for taking the time to hear and consider our opinions. Although I didn't write a 54-page rebuttal, I did approach this with very basic and direct comments. I'll start with the generalized definition of a wake or surf boat. Many boats can produce a wake or surfable wave without a ballast. A cabin cruiser on a small lake or 10 people on a ski boat. The statement that wake boats are incompatible or traditional water uses. Would bass boats with 250 horsepower motors be considered traditional? Would 30-foot pontoon boats with 300 horsepower tri-toons be considered traditional? How about the fear of the growth of the wake boat industry? In the petition, 4% of total sales nationwide are wake boats. I agree with the justification of the 20-foot depth. Surfing in deeper water is always better and more enjoyable. However, I am not in favor of a law. I'm in favor of education of the lake that you are on and the best areas to practice wake surfing, as long as there is a mutual respect for those in the water when you get there. I also have an issue with the proposed 60-acre wake zone. What if that's the favorite fishing hole or on the kayak route to a friend's camp? Have we considered all of that in those opinions proposed on the 15 lakes out of 800? The 200 versus 1,000 shoreline rule is an interesting point. It is noted in this petition that the shoreline is in jeopardy due to wakes. I've spoken with 2 different law enforcement officers about this topic. Without question, the major offenders of the 200-foot rule are pontoon boats. It should be noted that in both jurisdictions, they've never had any serious issues with wake boats or formal complaints. Also, did you know on a surf boat you can direct your wave one way or the other? Just an educational thing there. What about the inability to drain or inspect ballast or transport of wake surf boats? I'm not convinced of this data and would suggest most surf and wake boats are staying on the lakes with the owners. As a matter of fact, New Hampshire has a wake boat commission, which got broken up with COVID. 4% of all surf boats, wake boats, travel lake to lake, 4%. Okay. The petition is grabbing known information and attempting to use it to their advantage, in particular water quality, the impact of wake boats in St. Albans Bay, where blooms are being blamed for property devaluation. Situations such as these demonstrate the need for management strategies. It's a known issue. Black Ridge or the Stevens Brook, Mill River, which both feed into St. Albans Bay, are both lined by farmland and is a known runoff issue, not a wakeboard issue. Moving on to the loss of peaceful lake environment due to the noise emitted by wakeboat motors, but that's not going to affect the powerful pontoon motors or audio or the restored Chris Craft with the beautiful V8 in it. One area I think that we would all agree upon is education. I think this has proven itself before and again. I would also suggest open communication, open minds, cooperation. Every lake is different, every boat is different. And with proper work in this area, the lakes and shores can remain open to all and be a place for generations to come, even if traditional use evolves into the 21st century.
Next up, we've got David Brown.
Before you start the clock, I want to tell Chris Kona, I want you to resurrect those ski jumps. So I'd like to see that. That sounds pretty impressive. All right, first of all, my name is Dave Brown. I live on Lake Iroquois. I do own a 21-foot surf boat. I've had it since 2017. Ernie, I thought, made a good point about the cooperation that happens on our lake. You know, if the lake is really busy, whether you're a water skier, whether you're a wakeboarder, whether you're a wake surfer, whether you're a tuber, people kind of take their turns. The kayakers and paddleboarders tend to stay within the no wake zone within 200 feet. That isn't always the case, but there's a general cooperation and mutual respect that we all try to do on the lake. And also wake surf boats operate at about 10 miles per hour. And there was a question earlier, could they operate at less than 10? I run mine at like 10.2. So yes, I'm sure you could go 9.5 and still operate. I would argue that wake surfing relative to, say, water skiing or wakeboarding, certainly for the person doing the recreation, is much safer. There's a lot more injuries, tubing, water skiing, and the like. My general objection to the petition is it's pretty filled with speculation, sensationalism, and general kind of exaggeration. You know, there's a loon on the cover of the petition. I think there's some anecdotal evidence here that, you know, there's been a loon on our lake since 2016. There's been boats on our lake since 2016. I heard someone else mention the same thing on their lake, that the wake boats don't seem to be pushing away balloons. There's, you know, pictures of dead fish in the petition. I understand it's about water quality. Our lake recently had some testing, and it's the cleanest it's been in a long time, as Rodney noted. Also, the Gigawave boat that's profiled in the petition, obviously, would never happen on a Vermont lake. It's, you know, made for 28 people. It's 35 feet long, $600,000 boat. It's just a lot of kind of sensationalism. Wow. All right, I'm going to skip a bunch. Because I haven't really heard this mentioned, there's a lot about, there was like 17 states mentioned in the report. I went and did a little, you know, internet monkey Googling and tried to figure out what's going on with other states. I looked at New Hampshire. They had a 15-person commission look at this for 9 months. Their recommendations didn't include any of the restrictions such as is in the petition. In South Carolina, they passed a law saying within 200 feet, no wake. Well, we already have that. So again, I'm opposed to the petition, and I think it's generally exaggerated, sensationalized, and I will note that some of the petitioners that signed on to this petition also signed a petition back in 2015 promoting no motorized vehicles on Lake Iroquois over 25 horsepower. So I think the surf boats are just sort of the beginning, and I think it's, you know, it's just going to go from there. So thank you for your time. Sorry, I went over my 2 minutes.
I wanted to give a chance for John Casella. He has his hand up on the Teams meeting. If you wanted to make a comment.
Yeah, thank you.
Unmute.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Appreciate the opportunity to make a comment. Our family's been on Lake Bombazine for 32 years, and we've had the pleasure of water skiing, fishing, surfing, the like, and my 6 children and now 8 grandchildren are, you know, really utilizing the lake and, have done so for a long period of time. My concern is that it seems as though there has not been a collective view of all of the participants on the lake to get together and to really talk about what are some of the things that could be done to minimize the impacts for everyone. It seems as though that stage did not happen, and I think if it did not happen, it really should have happened. The other thing that is clear, being on the lake for 32 years, the existing rules and regulations are not enforced as it is. So before we go putting more rules and regulations in place, we may want to take a look at, do we have the resources to enforce the existing rules and regulations before we go and put additional regulations in place. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up, we have Bobby Murphy.
Albert, Laura, thank you for putting this together, and thanks. It's almost 7:30, so I'll be brief. Bobby Murphy, I live in Stowe, Vermont, and under this proposed petition, I would be banned from using my wake boat at the Waterbury Reservoir. And so I'm opposed to this petition, and specifically, I think it's overreaching. It feels like this is a sledgehammer trying to kill a mosquito when you look at some of the information. This is what a surf boat owner looks like. We're professional people, we're families, we go slow. It's safer because you can see, you have the ability to slow down and stop much differently than water skiing, although I grew up water skiing all my life. And I'll tell you, I look at some of the cabin cruisers that we get on the Waterbury Reservoir, and they rival, actually, they could swamp my boat, and my boat is a specific wake surf boat. So I think, probably need to look at, what are the specifics and are they overreaching? And frankly, there is something that I do agree with, is that inappropriate use of any boat, not just a wake surf boat, but any boat, is, incompatible with the Vermont water quality standards. And I think that is important to look at. What are the specific regulations that we already have in place? And could those and should those be more, focused on and more looked after from an enforcement perspective? Again, respectful driving, taking the time and slowing down, I think, is exactly what wake surfing is. And in that case, again, I oppose the petition and think that there's other ways to get to maybe what we're trying to get to, but this isn't it. Thank you.
We've got, I'm sorry, Zimmer Hayes. Did I read that correctly?
How's it going, everybody? My name's Zimmer Hayes. I'm a resident of Vermont. I live here in Stowe. I moved here when I was 14 years old to attend Burke Mountain Academy. I went on to the UVM Business School, and I currently own a business in Stowe. I am an avid wakeboarder and water sports enthusiast, as well as a general outdoor enthusiast as a Vermonter. Last fall, I sold my wakeboard boat and have made the decision to leave Vermont and move to the Pacific Northwest because of the changes that I've seen happen in our great state, and specifically this petition and its nature. I'd like all of you to take a really good look at this picture of a friend of mine. His name's Josiah, his last name. This is a picture of him wake surfing behind my boat, I believe in 2016. Josiah's mother was a bartender in Stowe. She was a very busy mother at 4, and she started a little business named Stowe Cider. You may have heard of it. But before that happened, she was a very busy mother, and Josiah was a child that she had before her marriage in Stowe. And in 2016, he came to us with 2 black eyes and a broken nose. And his mother asked me to do something with him. I'm not much of a, parent or babysitter. I have 2 dogs. So I took Josiah wake surfing. The idea of taking away a sport like that from a young boy, and again, I'm going to have you guys just, this is a boy that he, 2 black guys, he was barely even able to be on a boat. See his face there. I don't think he's thinking about abuse or anything of that nature. I think he's having a good time. I
2 minutes.
I think there's a lot of discussion that continue to go on this topic, but as a long-standing Vermonter, I would hope that, as I leave the state, that you guys can figure out a way to move forward in a positive direction on this topic that's going to be a constructive outcome, and not limiting, creating bylaws, blue laws, whatever you call them, because that's not the state that I moved to. And I don't believe that embodies what a real Vermonter is. Thank you for your time.
We're almost at 7:30 and we have 2 people left on this list, so I think we can fit it in. Brad Freilich.
Hello, my name is Brad Freilich, and I am the Chief Government Affairs Officer with the Water Sports Industry Association. We are here to oppose this proposal as is. And let me tell you why. First, let me ask you a question. Let me first preface it with these remarks. I think those people who are here and supporting it believe that there is a problem with wake boats and wake surfing. How many of you can agree with that? I think a lot of you do. I don't think taking those problems and using this plan and concentrating it on 15 lakes is the answer. To correct some things in the original presentation, our organization does support regulation, so much so that we are attempting to pass legislation across the country. The South Carolina bill mentioned earlier, that was our bill. We also passed the bill in a similar bill in Tennessee. It has 5 parts. It has 200-foot setback. Never, ever go within 200 feet of the shore. Second provision, a nighttime ban on all wake surfing. Third provision, a minimum lake size. And that will vary, I would say, based on what's on the statute, a ban on wake surfing behind a boat with an exposed propeller that they could fall into, and a requirement that the rider be wearing a Coast Guard approved vest. Why do we go with 200? 200 seems to be the most controversial one. Let me talk about the numbers and let me give you the exact numbers. We've all heard about these studies. Well, there's industry studies. Yes, the industry study was 2015. It was called the Gowdy study. The year before that, there was a study done on Lake Memphremagog on the Canadian side called the Quebec study. Going forward, there was the Minnesota study from earlier this year, and the latest study is the Coddy-Face study of fluid dynamics. All of them say different things. 2 of them say 200 feet. One says, and let me preface that, 900 to 1,000. The other one recommends 500. Let me talk about those. Our 200 comes from what? Okay, our 200 is based on do no harm. What is the largest wave that lake is going to see naturally? We looked at 2 studies back in the 60s. where they looked at 200-acre or less lakes. And they determined that there is going to be no FAC. There's going to be no way that there is going to be any wave action on those lakes, except in this circumstance. And that is what we would call a gust front microburst, where the storm, the supercell comes through, downburst hits the lake and it frosts up the lake. One study said the maximum wave size was 11 inches. The other study said 13. We said, okay, we need to come up with a distance where in every case, from the biggest to the smallest lake, that wave size, when it hits the shore, is going to be smaller than that. At 200 feet, it is 9.5 feet. The Minnesota study, which talks about 500 feet, I'm going to give you a number because all of the studies show the same curve. That number is 7 inches. And then finally, the Quebec study, where it says 900 to 1,000, let me tell you what that exactly said, and let me quote. The 900 to 1,000 feet was the distance that it took for the wave to go time to completely dissipate.
Thank you. All right, and finally, we have Karen Press. I can't read the writing exactly, sorry.
Anybody sign up on this form?
And your name starts with a K?
It's like, it's speak yet.
Okay,
Good.
well then that's everyone.
Yeah.
My name is Arthur. Legal question for Oliver. You have the answer.
I'll do my best.
How is, it's my observation that everybody here, majority either or majority of your own property on the lease or live on it and have folks who want to for or against it. How is the general public warned of this meeting? So I only found out that my association figured out water schemes. There's a few people here earlier that we're only aware that I might be commissioned with them. We're all waiting for those. And my question to you is how is this properly warned when it's just association over here?
This meeting has been warned with 30-day advance notice on our website. We've used multiple social media channels to inform hundreds of followers about it. We've issued a press release on 2 occasions that was carried by at least 4 of Vermont's largest publications, Vermont Digger, Burlington Free Press. We've exceeded the requirements that are on the books for warning about public meetings. It does require someone to be paying attention, but there isn't really a capacity to go door to door and hand out, leaflets about the meeting. So we've looked at what is typically done to inform the public about meetings of this sort. We've exceeded those requirements, and that's why we have a fantastic turnout of over 100 people, which, believe it or not, is rare for a public meeting organized by the Department of Environmental Conservation. I think we had about, you tell me how many people were in the room, and we had over 70 online at one point. So I'm comfortable with how we've done this. We also have another meeting next Thursday, and as required by statute, public comment is accepted in writing for another 10 days after the second meeting. I think that's adequate response. 7:35, we're going to briefly talk about next steps. We'll be brief. We'll have a meeting like this next Thursday, July 7 in Manchester Center. It's a hybrid meeting once again, another way to maximize participation. After that, we continue with the pre-rulemaking phase, and we begin our review of all the comments we've received in writing and verbally. We analyze the petition, we analyze studies that are available of all types, those that are in the bibliography of the petition, and we'll consider all that as the Department of Environmental Conservation with input from Fish and Wildlife, Forest Parks and Rec, and the State Police Marine Division. After that, we'll make a recommendation to our commissioner and our secretary about whether or not to initiate formal rulemaking, whether or not to deny the petition, and if we're going to initiate formal rulemaking, what rule we want to initiate. The secretary will make that decision. We'll provide notice of that, and we'll proceed from there. That's the process that rulemaking or the pre-rulemaking phase under our 2013 procedures follows to either get to rulemaking or to deny the petition. Bruce gave us an idea, and others echoed it, about getting folks together to talk this through with representatives from different interest groups, if you will. That's something that we'll consider as well as was done previously as use of public water rules. Petitions and decisions were made, up to 2012 when the Water Resources Panel / Board was dissolved. So I think we're gonna, sir, you have a question? Yeah. Whatever the later date is we'll accept comments and, yeah, the requirement is 10 days after the last public meeting. So I was thinking July 7th plus 10, but if we put 29th, I think we may have, sorry, that's my mistake. We may have put that in just to give more time. Whatever we put on the website is what we plan to do. So I think with that, this will be the last question. When we get to that notice, which is sort of the last step of the pre-rulemaking phase after the secretary has made her decision. Is that what you're referring to? Yeah, at that point, we'll reach out directly to folks who have participated. We don't have as I've said to everyone that's contacting me, we don't have an email list. We just use our website as a form of communication, but we will issue a press release on whatever our notice is. And, we issue the press release to a sort of distribution list that goes to all the media houses. It's up to them if they want to run with the story or not. But I think that's hopefully the media houses that have already shown interest in their run up to tonight will be interested in the decision. We'll continue to follow this story. Thank you very much for coming. Wrap it up there. Lloyd, we could just stop.